We meet again, Mr. Siegel.
Good morning, Hank. It's Saturday. Well, at least it is when I'm filming this. Who knows what day it is when it actually gets put online. Today I'm greeting you from the beautiful city of Providence, Rhode Island. If you've never heard of Providence, it's about a 30-minute drive from Boston, a 3-hour drive from New York City, and about a 30-hour drive from my hometown in Texas. Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore. And if you're wondering, what am I doing halfway across the country? I kind of live here now. Well, not kind of. I live here now. You see, part of the reason why I've been so quiet on this channel is because I've been, finishing my master's thesis, getting a new job, and moving here. So I figured it would be kind of weird if I just started recording in Providence without any explanation. So I thought I'd show you around and have a cheeky little vlog to show the sights and sounds of Providence. Now, I could go for just a straight and simple vlog. Put up a pretty background, throw in some Instagram pics maybe, talk about how my day went, and that would probably be good enough. But that's real Sam the Anthro 1.0 stuff, aka the stuff that I was making at the beginning of this channel. And that's not where we are right now. We're in Sam the Anthro 2.0, aka my academic nerd era, aka the era where I have to overanalyze everything. So I can't just have any vlog. I need a vlog that's funny, educational, and above all, authentic. If you want to be a successful creator on YouTube, you have to sell authenticity. Those who are deemed authentic are seen as the unproblematic faves and yas queens of the internet. But failing to establish that authenticity, or worse, if you have it and then somehow fall from that authentic grace, means that those who once happily called you queen will also happily line up to see you get guillotined. But what does it actually mean to be authentic? And why do so many people want it?
What do you think of when I say the word vlogger? Is it the high energy and frat boy nature, the lavish lifestyles of the rich and famous? Maybe more family-oriented channels, and more and more and more and more, all under the same title of vlogger.
Hello there. Welcome to the academic part of the video. Now, as an academic, I can't just assume that you know what words mean. I have to clearly define those terms with the help of my good friend Mr. Dictionary here. Now, if we just take a peek inside Mr. Dictionary, we'll see that the definition for vlogger is stop stealing bits from prettier and more talented YouTubers, you hack. Well, I don't think that's gonna work. So, since I don't have a dictionary definition, I'm gonna do the next best thing and quote an expert in the field of vlogging, Casey Neistat. Is Casey Neistat too dated of a reference already? Do people still know who Casey Neistat is? Well, even if he's not the hip vlogging sensation that he was in 2016, I think it's still pretty undeniable the role that he's played on vlogging as a format. And that's really on display when we look at his video that he made with over 5 million views on how to vlog like him.
What is up with this weather? June 6th. Summer should be here already.
Okay, step 1. Complain about the weather. Step 2, write things on screen. Okay.
I think what fascinated me the most about the whole genre was the idea of using your life as a narrative for a daily series.
Okay, so this is where the video actually starts to get interesting.
There was sort of the promise or the deal that I made with myself was never an obligation to share with you the intimacies of every day of my life. This isn't a journal, but instead, could I find every day in my life a 3-act narrative to share?
Casey has a background as a filmmaker, and so his idea of making a vlog is taking the raw material of your life, recording it as you go about your day, and then taking those pieces and restructuring them so that they fit within the traditional 3-act structure that filmmaking typically utilizes. Casey seems to view vlogging as a sort of filmmaking challenge, basically saying, if I take clips of my everyday life and try and arrange them, can I make a compelling narrative? And that really appealed to me when I was watching the video, because that's essentially the same thing that I did when I was doing my research and writing my ethnography. I mean, not exactly the same, but the same basic concept of taking pieces of life, taking pieces of existence, and rearranging them in a way to tell a story, to make something compelling with a point. From the earliest rockings of my cradle, I had known about the caper's bray rabbit is apt to cut, and what the squinch owl says from the housetop. But it was fitting me like a tight chemise. I couldn't see it for wearing it. It was only when I was off in college, away from my native surroundings, that I could see myself like somebody else, and stand off and look at my garment. Then I had to have the spyglass of anthropology to look through at that. These are the words of Zora Neale Hurston. If you've heard of Hurston before, it's probably because you had to read her in an English class at one point. She's best known for her works of fiction, such as Their Eyes Were Watching God or Sweat. But before she became known as one of the great writers of the Harlem Renaissance, she was educated and did research as an anthropologist through Barnard College. See, Mom and Dad? Successful people get anthropology degrees too! At the time that Zora Neale Hurston was a grad student, most American anthropologists, who were also mainly white, were really interested in indigenous cultures that they themselves weren't members of. What really set Hurston apart was that rather than taking her analysis skills and going to study some culture that was completely foreign to her, she went back to her hometown and used it as a way to analyze herself and the people from her hometown, which really provided an insight into African American culture that really hadn't been seen up to that point. What Zora Neale Hurston was doing really didn't have a name at the time, but it's come to be known as autoethnography. Think of it as sort of a portmanteau love child of autobiography and ethnography. Autoethnography kind of covers two different research techniques that you can do one or the other, but a lot of the time they kind of fold into each other. One of that is researching people that you share some aspect of your identity with, and the other research technique is putting in more of your personal history and your personal feelings into the research that you're doing.
Providence is an interesting city. It's a city I'd never been to before I decided to move here. When I first got offered my new job in Providence, one of the first things I did was look up vlogs set in the city to watch. It might seem a bit silly, but it made the prospect of moving to a city I'd never been to in a state I'd never been to less daunting. After I arrived in Providence, I even visited many of the same places I'd seen in vlogs to see them for myself. And doing that almost felt nostalgic. Like, oh, I remember this place. Or, oh, this looks different in person than it did on camera. By first experiencing the city through other people's eyes, I had so much more to look forward to than if I had just moved here blindly. Getting to see somewhere through a vlog, it's a different experience. It doesn't always line up quite with seeing it in person. Things can look closer together when they're actually in completely different parts of the city. In an edited vlog, you don't see all the trash on the ground, or smell it for that matter. It's the city in its best light, with a beauty filter put on.
For me, reading ethnographies can draw out the feelings of meeting people without ever getting the chance to meet them. People that I would never have a chance to meet in real life. I've read ethnographies, everything from lobster fishermen in Maine to Amazonian tribes in the Brazilian rainforest to Spanish fire dancing. There's this quote that's often misattributed to John Green, but it's really this user up here, and the quote basically goes, "I'm in love with places I've never been to and people I've never seen." And that feeling is really present for me, especially in ethnography, but it can also be seen somewhat in vlogging.
The feeling of getting to know someone without even having a chance to meet them. Which kind of goes back to my points about YouTube. Actually, the other me was covering more of the YouTube stuff. She was supposed to be here already. Where is she?
What a beautiful view. Wait, is someone trying to FaceTime me? Who is... Oh, shit. Hey!
Hey? That's all you have to say? Where are you? What are you wearing? I thought we were working on the video today.
I'm just doing the recording right now. I mean, what's wrong with doing it outside? I thought it would be a nice change of pace.
Okay. But how exactly are we gonna do our academic analysis of autoethnography when you're playing around in a park?
Okay, so remember how you said you wanted to explore how autoethnography can be a form of storytelling? Well, I figured, what better way to explore storytelling on YouTube than with a vlog?
What? No. I thought we were ditching the vlogging.
We're already talking about vlogs in the video. Why can't I just have my fun little vlog? I mean, have you seen how cute I look? Have you seen my makeup?
Oh my god, yes. I said we could make one point about vlogging because you said the video wasn't hashtag relatable enough. But you can't take over the entire discussion with this. I mean, it's just so asinine and fake, and it completely devalues the point that we're making. If I sit here and talk about how vlogging is just like social science, then what's to stop every teenager with a camera thinking they're an ethnographer all of a sudden?
I think more than 100 people need to watch our videos before we start worrying about what the cultural backlash of them is. Like and subscribe, by the way, folks.
What is the point in wasting our time with this unimportant nonsense when we have important, educational, academic videos about anthropology to be making?
Well, maybe that's your problem. Maybe there's some truth and value in what seems silly and innocuous to you. And maybe if you pulled your pretentious nose out of a book for more than 5 minutes, you could appreciate that.
Oh. Okay. Well, if you're so interested in the truth and speaking your truth and sharing your realness all of a sudden, why don't you tell people what you've been up to? What you're doing here? Why you're suddenly not in Montreal anymore? I mean, you are very quick to talk about the good parts of your life, but you seem a little more reticent when it comes to the bad parts.
I was getting to that. I was gonna talk about that.
Oh, and I'm sure you were, sweetie. You can dress this up however you'd like, but this whole charade just seems like a pretend to smile.
Oh, an Ai Weiwei reference. How very intellectual of you. What are you gonna do next? Quote some Foucault at me? You know what? I don't need to take this from you. I can make my own video without your help.
Hey, smart one who doesn't need me. You realize if you walk off screen, it doesn't hang up the phone, right?
I know that. Can we just pretend that didn't happen? Look, I know this is a YouTube video and I could just edit out that if I really wanted to, but at the end of the day, I have to entertain you, and drama is entertainment, I guess. I have to keep an audience. You know, that's what I found really interesting when we compare the Casey Neistat era of vlogging to what came before it, was that concept of an audience. The idea of a vlog going from something that you did for yourself, essentially, to something that had an audience.
Early vlogs, which evolved from blogs, were essentially diary entries. You step in front of your webcam, you recount what you did that day, probably in one take with little to no editing, and then upload. Now, a lot of these earlier channels did have audiences, and fandoms eventually organically grew around them, but they were not built from the ground up with the framing of being something for others to consume, with maybe one notable exception. Casey, in comparison, is talking about vlogging from the perspective of a filmmaker. All these tricks and narrative choices, he's not really making those for himself. Well, he might be. I don't know Mr. Neistat personally. But he's also making those choices primarily with an audience in mind.
And that changes the medium entirely. When you start to think of your What I Do in a Day video as something that potentially millions of people could see, it goes from a stream of consciousness diary entry to something much more like a short film, much more planned and thought out, and way less in the moment. The filmmaking process in general kind of encourages that. I mean, here I am, standing in front of this beautiful bridge, recording this video, but what part of this video did I record first? Was it this? Or this? Or was it this? Now, I will admit, it was probably pretty obvious to tell where I made the cuts there, because I'm not that great at video yet, but someone who actually knows what they're doing could probably trick you pretty easily. It's all in the edits, the old filmmaking advice goes. I could be having an awful day and just not telling you. I could be recording different bits of this video on different days and just putting on the same outfit. Did I really move to Providence, or am I just telling you that and I'm on vacation here? You can't know the answer to that. Well, not really, not with any definitive certainty. So then that still leaves us with the question, if I'm just rearranging my life to make it look as pretty as possible, when does it become not my life anymore? Where is this line between quote-unquote real life and fiction? Oh, you're back. Finally done with that idiot's ramblings and ready for some real science, I take it. Well, some would say that anthropology's claim to be a science at all, along with most of the social sciences, is rather dubious. One of the reasons for that is anthropology, along with most of the social sciences, has an issue with replicability. If you want to prove that something is a scientific fact, being able to take the same steps as someone else and recreate the end results is pretty important. Sir Isaac Newton might have discovered gravity when he was in a garden cuddling with his boyfriend and an apple fell and hit him on the head, but the reason that we accept gravity as a scientific law is because every time you drop something, it hits the ground. You know, like when you're cutting up veggies after a long day and part of them hit the ground and you should probably really just throw it away, but you've survived this long without dying from COVID and hey, what's a little bacteria amongst friends? For example. But when that comes to trying to recreate anthropological experiments, it usually goes on a scale from really difficult to basically impossible. Let's take my own research as an example. Say that I gave you my thesis, I told you what my methodology was, and I said, okay, take this, go to Montreal, and recreate my experiment. How would you go about doing that? How would you recreate, let's say, the night in 2019 after Montreal Pride, where me and a good friend went and got paninis and had a conversation about what it meant to be queer and how we felt about attending Pride in 2019? Or how would one recreate the feeling of standing in a very large crowd, not knowing what was going to happen in 2020, as people stood in front of a microphone and talked about their experience living in Montreal during the AIDS crisis or during the police raids, and how complete strangers held each other and cried and comforted each other, that queer people could survive and live through all that and be standing there together in 2019. Those were vital to my ethnographic research. They informed my opinions, they were part of my data set, but you can't exactly put that in a lab and try to do that again. I mean, even if you had a time machine and could magically go back to that time to try to experience those events,
you probably wouldn't get the same exact outcomes that I did, because my research is still informed by who I am as a person, what I had learned at that point, what I would learn during my research. It's just not that simple. This is also clear when Hurston talks about her own ethnographic experiences.
When Zora Neale Hurston wrote her ethnography of her hometown, she outright states that any white person who might have tried to conduct the research that she was setting out to do would have faced much more opposition. Hurston argues that black people tend to default to telling white people what they think they want to hear, which makes sense considering the everything that was happening at the time she wrote this.
Can you honestly say that if Hurston was a white male academic going to 1930s Florida to do this same research, they would have been able to get the same warm welcome and the same ethnographic data that Hurston did? Now, I'm not saying there isn't value in another academic trying to do that same experiment, that there wouldn't be something valuable to gain if someone went to that same town in Florida today and saw what kind of folkloric elements were available. But no matter what, you're going to get a different perspective simply by being a different person in a different time with a different background and a different education, a different everything. And that makes the replicability problem in anthropology really difficult for its place as a science. We can't put people in a hydrogen collider and get the same results every time. It's just really difficult to authenticate anthropology. Authenticate. Authenticity. Authenticity and the reliability of anthropology is actually a really interesting subject to bring up when we're talking about Hurston, because Hurston went from doing social science to writing fiction, which would seem like a pretty big jump for most people, I would think, but Hurston really didn't see it that way. She saw her work as a fiction writer as a continuation of the work that she first began in anthropology. Hurston would go on to publish many works of fiction and many works of anthropology. Most of her fiction is taken from pieces of her life or the lives of people that she knew, woven together to create these tapestries of myth that aren't 100% factually true to those lives, probably, but they still hold a capital T truth in them. And that's the thing about Hurston, that she didn't see that division. I've gotten so hung up on being a capital A academic who deals in facts and science that maybe I've kind of forgotten the role that imagination and storytelling plays in anthropology. Oh God. She was right, wasn't she? Oh, I'm gonna have to call her again.
Maybe the other me has a point. I hate to say it, but I can't exactly call this a candid portrayal of my life. For one, I'm very aware that I'm looking into the camera lens of an iPhone right now and not talking to whoever is watching this video. I'm going to this cool park on my day off because during my normal life, God forbid I don't have time to go to a park like this, or wear makeup, or do any of these things that make my life seem so cool and hashtag aesthetic and hashtag relatable. But does that make what I'm saying inherently lesser or fake? Is the observed life inherently a false one? Are we in sort of a Schrodinger's vlogger situation where I'm both inauthentic and authentic up until the point that I'm observed and then the answer is reached? Authenticity, it's really a tricky thing in anthropology too. I mean, we're often going to parts of the world that we're totally unfamiliar with and not really a part of a culture, and sitting in the corner of a room with a notepad and pen going, oh, don't mind me, I'm just recording your every thought and feeling, but please continue your conversation. People can act really weird when they know that they're being observed. I mean, have you ever tried to record yourself on camera and then seen how you act when a camera is pointed at you? It's kind of a similar concept. People can be really stilted and awkward They can say things that they wouldn't normally say, or straight up omit things because they know that that's going on the record. They might feed you information that they think you want to hear from them. That is the real work of anthropology. Not just going out to places and writing down what people say, but getting people to really open up to you, to talk to you, to be authentic. And when I describe it like that, it just sounds so fake and manipulative. I mean, maybe that's what anthropology and vlogging really have in common. They're just exercises in tricking people so that they give you what they want, what you want. Not what they want, what you want. I mean, you can justify this to yourself if you want to. I'm entertaining people. I'm educating people. I'm advancing science. I'm making a difference. But those are just excuses to make yourself feel better, isn't it? Why am I doing this again? Oh God, she's calling me back.
Hey!
Hey.
So, how's the vlog going?
Why do you care? You didn't want me to do this stupid vlog anyways, right? It's not real anthropology, isn't that what you said?
That is what I said, wasn't it? Maybe that was a little harsh of me.
A little.
Okay, a lot harsh of me. I shouldn't have been so dismissive of you. You were just trying to make the video fun and interesting, and I wasn't being respectful of that. But you kind of get where I was coming from too, don't you?
I mean, kind of. I get that anthropology is important to you, but I don't really get what you're doing. We've spent our entire academic career questioning authorities and the ways of academia. I mean, that was what basically our entire thesis was about. That's what anthropology is about. And now you just want me to bow down to it?
Okay, sure, but anthropology is also an analytical tool. It requires training and education, and you can't just tell everyone on the internet who makes a vlog that they're suddenly an anthropologist.
Oh my God, other me. That's not what I was trying to do. Or maybe it was. I don't even know at this point.
What? What's wrong?
I don't know. Maybe you were the one who was right when we talked earlier. I mean, this is all just performances. That's what autoethnography and vlogging really has in common. I'm just taking these cherry-picked parts of my life, cutting them together, putting happy vlogger music over them, and saying, look, hey, isn't this super thoughtful? Don't you agree with me? I totally didn't frame this so that you would agree with me.
Okay, I get it. Classic academic spiral and imposter syndrome. You think about something so hard that you think yourself into a circle, and then you start doubting everything you know. Relax, I'm gonna help. So you know how Judith Butler says,
I'm sorry. You're quoting Judith Butler to me. Do you know how many quotations of Butler I had in my thesis?
yes, sweaty, I do, because we are literally the same person. Now will you shut up for 30 seconds and let me say something?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll let you speak.
Thank you. Now, you know how in Judith Butler's performativity theory, she talks a lot about how you perform your gender. You try to be ladylike, you get a certain reaction from people, you experiment, you change, you do your hair different, and throughout that process, you develop your idea of gender.
But I'm not even talking about gender right now. This is about authenticity.
Because Judith Butler's ideas around gender didn't come out of nowhere. She was already building on earlier academics who thought identity in general came from community, from conversation, from trial and error. Like, let's say I decided to get into jazz.
Ugh, you would like jazz.
See, that's what I'm talking about. I decide to get into jazz, and I tell you that I'm getting into jazz. And you can tell me, oh, I love jazz. Here's a CD I'm interested in. Or you could say, oh, I hate jazz. They're a bunch of pretentious assholes. And that could set me on one or two paths. And not just you, everyone that I have a conversation with about jazz. My mom, the person who works at the grocery store, the person who made the jazz CD that I bought, all influence my perspective.
Well, I still don't see what this has to do about a vlog.
My point is, who is the authentic me in that circumstance? If I change my opinion because you say you don't like jazz, am I suddenly fake? Am I suddenly lying about who I am?
Both? Neither? I guess it depends on the circumstances.
That's right. It depends on the circumstances, because we are informed and shaped by everyone we come in contact with. And we can decide to change because someone we love hates something, or loves something, or shows us something that we'd never thought of before. And each time that we change, or we react differently, or we speak differently to a different person, that doesn't make us more or less authentic. You can react differently in different circumstances. You're always gonna talk differently to your mom, or your best friend, or your boss, and that doesn't make you more or less authentic in those circumstances. It just makes you different, and that's okay. Those are all different versions of you, but they're still you.
Well, when you put it that way, the search for authenticity seems kind of pointless.
Not pointless, just unnecessary.
I think I can agree with what you're saying, but if I go along with that, then I don't really have a conclusion to this video.
I think you need to stop hiding behind me.
What? No, I'm not doing that.
Oh, you're not? You've spent the last insert time of this video explaining and defining and analyzing, but you still haven't just come out and said how you feel. You're caging this all inside of an academic discussion. But if you want to be authentic, maybe you need to stop being an academic for a second and just say how you feel.
Just feel your feelings. I think I could do that. I feel... Oh, this is just too hard. Can't you just quote some Foucault at me?
I'm hanging up now.
No. Well, shit. I guess it's just you and me at this point, then. If there's anyone watching this video at this point, which I'm not totally sure there is. But either way, I've kind of been avoiding you. Or at least avoiding this subject. But I've got to come up with something, so I guess let's walk. And now here we are. Not quite as picturesque as the other places that I had in this video. But you know, I had a really gorgeous backdrop planned for this video. It's right on the other side of this camera. Wouldn't you know it? It's behind a locked gate. In November of 2020, against my better judgment, I decided to mask up, get on a plane, leave my cozy apartment in Montreal, and go home for the holiday. What was supposed to be a couple of weeks with my family ended up being a lot more than that when Quebec decided to totally shut down again. And I thought, okay, whatever, I can stay with mom and dad a couple more weeks. But a couple more weeks turned into another month, and then another 2 months, and then the next thing I know, I'm trapped in Texas for another year and a half. Providence wasn't my first choice. Providence was just the first job that called back. I couldn't even work on this YouTube channel most of the time because I felt like there was this unspoken secret haunting me in the background, that there was something going on in my life that I wasn't saying anything about. And maybe I didn't have to, you know, people don't have to know the entirety of my life, but it felt like the only thing that I could think about. And I didn't want to say anything about it because it was making me miserable. Providence is cool. Providence is fun, and people have been really nice to me, and I have a cool job where I help people, and I make decent money. I feel like I'm just grieving for the life that I could have had in Montreal, that I didn't get to have. Not because I changed my mind or I chose something different, but because the world just decided that. Maybe that's the most authentic thing that I can say. That the world sucks, and I'm grieving. I'm grieving for something that I didn't get to have. And maybe that's the end of the video. This isn't how I want to end my video. This isn't even the location that I wanted to end my video in. It's not exciting or funny or even educational, but it is authentic, I guess. And maybe that's the best that I can do right now. Okay, I think we're done here.